At the height of his power, Napoleon Bonaparte's Grande Armée was the most feared fighting force in the world. His genius for strategy was unmatched. Yet, this legendary war machine was repeatedly brought to its knees, not just by cannons and cavalry, but by an enemy that was invisible, silent, and far more deadly. This enemy was an army of pathogens, viruses and bacteria that turned the conditions of 19th century warfare into a feast of death, reshaping the map of the world and helping to bring an emperor's ambitions to ruin. To understand why Napoleon's armies were so vulnerable, we have to look at the state of medicine and hygiene in the early 1800s. The germ theory of disease wouldn't be accepted for another 50 years. Instead, doctors believed in the miasma theory, that diseases were caused by bad air or foul smells. This meant they completely misunderstood contagion. They had no idea about the microscopic killers lurking in contaminated water, on unwashed hands, or in the bites of insects. Military surgeons were often dreaded more than they were hoped for. While pioneers like Baron Dominique Jean Leray introduced concepts like the flying ambulance to evacuate the wounded quickly, they were exceptions. Most surgeons were poorly trained, and their main solution for a shattered limb was amputation, performed without anesthesia or any concept of sterilization. Infection was the most likely killer for anyone who survived the initial surgery. Hygiene in the army was, by our standards, non-existent. Soldiers wore the same lice-infested woolen uniforms for months. Bathing was a rare luxury. An order in the French army even forbade washing uniforms. They were to be cleaned by brushing and beating. Crowded, unsanitary camps, shared by thousands of men and animals, became perfect breeding grounds for disease. It was into this pre-scientific world that Napoleon marched his armies, tragically unequipped for the invisible enemies that awaited them. Long before the infamous Russian winter, Napoleon's ambitions were dealt a catastrophic blow in the tropical heat of the Caribbean. The island of Saint-Domingue, modern-day Haiti, was the jewel of the French Empire, the world's top producer of sugar and coffee. Following a massive slave revolt led by the brilliant general Toussaint Louverture, Napoleon sent a formidable expedition of over 40,000 soldiers in 1801 to reclaim the colony. Led by his own brother-in-law, General Charles Leclerc, the French initially crushed the rebel armies and captured Louverture. Victory seemed certain, but as the French consolidated control, they met an ally of the Haitian rebels they couldn't fight, the Aedes aegypti mosquito. This mosquito carries yellow fever, a virus known fearfully as yellow jack, or the black vomit. After a few days of fever and muscle pain, about 15% of cases enter a toxic phase. The virus attacks the liver, causing jaundice, the yellowing skin that gives the disease its name. This is followed by internal bleeding, causing victims to vomit coagulated blood. Fatality rates among non-immune newcomers, like the French soldiers, could reach a horrifying 70%. Crucially, the Haitian population, largely of African descent, had a significant immunological advantage. Many had been exposed to the virus before and were immune. Rebel leader Jean-Jacques Dessalines knew this, telling his troops, "Take courage, the whites from France cannot hold out against us. Soon they will fall sick and die like flies." He was right. When the rainy season began, in summer 1802, the coastal cities became massive mosquito breeding grounds. The epidemic exploded. General Leclerc's letters to Napoleon paint a picture of an army dissolving. He wrote, "In despair of the scourge which is destroying my army." Reinforcements from France were just fresh fuel for the virus, dying even faster than the veterans. By November 1802, General Leclerc himself was dead from the fever. By the time the French evacuated a year later, the disaster was total. Of the nearly 60,000 French personnel sent to the island, it's estimated that up to 55,000 had died, the vast majority from yellow fever. This defeat shattered Napoleon's American ambitions. With his strategic base in the Caribbean gone, he abandoned his plans for North America and, in 1803, sold a vast territory to the United States in what we now know as the Louisiana Purchase. A tiny virus, carried by a mosquito, had secured the independence of Haiti and doubled the size of the United States. Before the Haitian catastrophe, another of Napoleon's campaigns was crippled by a different ancient plague. In 1799, during his invasion of Egypt and Syria, his army laid siege to the port city of Jaffa. After the city fell, and a brutal massacre of prisoners, a new enemy emerged from the squalor, the bubonic plague. The plague is caused by the bacterium Yersinia pestis, the same microbe responsible for the Black Death. It's transmitted by the bite of infected fleas, which jump from rodents to humans. Once in the body, the bacteria cause lymph nodes to swell into painful buboes, usually in the groin or armpits. Without treatment, it's usually fatal. The conditions in Jaffa, crowded with soldiers, corpses, and rats, were a perfect recipe for an outbreak. To combat the terror spreading through his ranks, Napoleon made a bold propaganda move. He visited the makeshift plague hospital and was famously painted as a Christ-like figure, fearlessly touching the bulbo of a sick soldier. The painting was meant to show him as a divine leader, immune to the disease that terrified his men. The reality was much darker. The plague continued to ravage his army, contributing to the failure of his next siege at Acre. During the horrific retreat back to Egypt, Napoleon allegedly ordered that the most gravely ill plague patients be given a fatal overdose of opium. In his cold logic, it was a mercy killing to prevent them from being tortured by the Turks. His chief physician refused, but other accounts suggest the poison was administered anyway. The plague in Syria was another brutal lesson. Military might is powerless against an enemy you can't see or understand. But the most infamous example of disease-shattering a Napoleonic army came during the Russian campaign of 1812. Napoleon invaded with the Grande Armée, over 500,000 men. 6 months later, fewer than 100,000 staggered back. For centuries, the story was dominated by General Winter. But modern science has uncovered a more complex truth. The army wasn't just frozen, it was eaten alive by pathogens. The huge size of the army and the Russians' scorched earth tactics led to a total breakdown of supply lines and hygiene long before the snow fell. Starvation and exhaustion created a perfect storm for disease. The main killers were louse-borne diseases, which thrive when thousands of people are crowded together, unable to wash themselves or their clothes. For a long time, epidemic typhus was thought to be the primary culprit. Caused by the bacterium Rickettsia proazekii and spread by body lice, it causes high fever, delirium, and death in up to 40% of untreated cases. The soldiers huddling together for warmth were unknowingly facilitating their own destruction, but recent discoveries have revealed a whole cast of killers. In the early 2000s, a mass grave of Napoleon's soldiers was found in Vilnius, Lithuania. By analyzing the DNA in the soldiers' teeth, scientists found evidence not just of typhus, but of other diseases. Advanced analysis published as recently as 2025 has cast an even wider net. They found compelling evidence for Salmonella enterica, the cause of paratyphoid fever, and Borrelia recurrentis, the agent of louse-borne relapsing fever. Relapsing fever causes terrifying cycles of high fever and exhaustion, followed by a brief recovery, only for the fever to return again and again, weakening the victim until they succumbed. For a starving, freezing soldier, it was a death sentence. The discovery of Salmonella, which causes paratyphoid fever, points to the complete breakdown of food and water sanitation. It's spread by contaminated food and water and causes fever and severe gut problems. One French army doctor reported widespread diarrhea, which he blamed on soldiers desperately eating salted beetroot from abandoned houses. This matches the symptoms perfectly. Starving soldiers drank from polluted water sources and ate anything they could find, turning their own camps into sources of contamination. This new evidence shows it wasn't just one disease. The soldiers were trapped in a cauldron of infectious disease. A man could be suffering simultaneously from typhus, relapsing fever, and a gut-wrenching salmonella infection, all while battling frostbite and starvation. It was a multi-front war against invisible enemies, and the soldiers had no defense. These campaigns reveal a fundamental truth of the Napoleonic Wars. The greatest killer was not the enemy army, but disease. For every soldier killed in combat, it's estimated that several more died from sickness. Wounds accounted for only about 15% of deaths. Pathogens claimed the other 85%. Napoleon, the master of logistics, was ultimately defeated by factors he couldn't comprehend. His failure to anticipate disease in Haiti cost him an American empire. His march through Syria was blunted by plague, and his inability to maintain hygiene in Russia created the incubator that consumed his legendary Grande Armée from within. It's a humbling reminder that the fate of empires has often been decided not just on the battlefield, but in the unseen war between humans and the microbial world.